Welcome back to the MovieBabble podcast. This week you've got myself and Nick, and we're going to be talking about quite a bit. We have a fairly full slate. It was kind of an eventful week. So we want to start off and talk about Chadwick Boseman, who unfortunately passed away a couple of days ago from colon cancer. This was pretty out of the blue. It sounds like for even people that he worked with. Reports are saying that he has had colon cancer. He's been fighting that basically as long as he's been in the top tier Marvel spotlight for the past 4 years, which just makes all the work he was doing even more impressive. And I think for me, it really shows how much he cared about what he was doing and kind of the gravity of the situation and how impactful he saw his roles as being and just how much he fought to get them out there. I can't imagine what that was like doing most of his own stunts. I mean, even just spending hours in the makeup chair every morning, doing 12-hour shoots with that battle going on inside of him.
Yeah, there's been a few celebrity deaths that have really kind of hit me hard, and I think there's a lot of like Robin Williams. I know was a big one for a lot of people, and Carrie Fisher too. But this one is up there for me as it's a total blindside. The guy's 43 years old. Yeah, I'm gonna miss him dearly. Chadwick Boseman, I think, was turning into one of my favorite actors. That's another thing of his passing too, where you feel like he was just really getting started, and Black Panther was really kind of like the coming out party for him, and he had been in 24 or 42, sorry, as Jackie Robinson, and I'm obviously Black Panther from there, and it really felt like he was really getting going. He was obviously into Five Bloods earlier this year, but yeah, it's a real bummer. I loved every time I saw him on screen. I thought he was just such an interesting actor, and he was always really decent in his roles. Like he had a real sense of goodness about him and everything he did. I think he would have matured into a really incredible adult actor, and I think after the Black Panther days were done for him, he would have done some really, really interesting work. Yeah, he's one of those guys where he was really comfortable, like allowing other people to not necessarily steal scenes from him, but sort of do the more showy performance. And you look at the Black Panther role where he's just very reserved, and against like Michael B. Jordan, who's really like going up to, he's at like level 10. But he always was not necessarily the quietest one in the scenes, but he has this reserved power around him that really resonated. And yeah, he's really a one of a kind performer. I'm really gonna miss him.
And you're seeing a lot of anecdotes just kind of come out of the woodwork is people that knew him and worked with him are reflecting on what his life and what his work meant to them. And I thought it was just really impressive. Seeing a lot of stories about how much he fought for particular aspects of his characters. So there was a story from 42 where it was talking about the scene where Jackie Robinson gets mad and breaks his bat, and how Chadwick Boseman really fought to put that scene in there so that you could see the whole character really, and not just the heroic, oh, everything was easy, this is Jackie Robinson, he's a legend, but really kind of get to the root of who he was and see him struggle amidst everything. And then, even with Black Panther and talking with an African accent and just some of the choices they made, even in Civil War, I saw a story that Ryan Coogler put in his tribute to Chadwick Boseman, where he was talking about how when it came to Civil War, there was the first scene that T'Challa and his father have together. It was Chadwick Boseman's idea to do that in John Connie's native language, which he learned, like Chadwick Boseman learned on the spot for his scene that day, which I think is really just impressive. Speaks a lot to his talent as an actor, but also to kind of the gravitas and the grounding he wanted to bring to a lot of these roles.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, and you really can't overestimate how important he was just in elevating black voices and in a studio that, or in a system that in Hollywood that just really needs more of them, frankly. He's just so terrific in just all the roles. I mean, you go from Jackie Robinson to James Brown to Thurgood Marshall. There's so many important black character or black people in history. And I'm sure, I mean, you see that his role as Storm and Norman in *Five Bloods. That movie might be really hard for me to watch for quite some time. Especially the ending of that movie. The like the role that his character plays. That might be one that I struggle to go back to, but I think also just adds another layer to how like the themes of that movie. Yeah, he always really struck me in interviews, and obviously like, we don't know him, so we're kind of speaking on the periphery here, but he always struck me as just a very decent guy who is really thoughtful, and you see a lot of his speeches where he's looking that he understands that what he's doing is bigger than just him. So yeah, I really I'm really sad, and even like I I just liked him. I really, really liked him in every movie that he was in. It was always like, even like in his smaller roles, like you think of him in the totally forgettable Draft Day, where he is one of the people getting drafted. He's one of the players, and you're like, oh, it's Chadwick Boseman. Like every time he shows up, it's just a great thing in a movie. So it really does feel like we were robbed of seeing something just really great. And I think it just speaks to like all the people who were coming out to talk about how great of a person he was. Where I think we all get stuck on who he was as an actor and who he was as a celebrity, but it feels like he was just one of the better people in Hollywood. So it's a big loss on that side of it too.
Yeah, and I think a lot of what just feels so wrong about it is just how sudden everything was. And I think you're seeing a lot of that with the people that even knew him personally that didn't realize that, this whole time he's been struggling with cancer and fighting that battle while he's out there being a good human and being a terrific actor and being this elevator of Black voices and Black culture. And I think that's really probably why it really hurts a lot for a lot of people. Obviously there aren't as many people that know him, but you see everybody on the internet is just kind of flocking to how much this guy meant to them. Even if they've only ever seen him in Black Panther, just how much his life and his work was able to mean to so many people.
Yeah, and I really can't get over, you mentioned before, where he's dealt with this for 4 years. So basically the entire time he has been in superhero shape, he's been dealing with this, which I just think is unbelievable. Like to think about like the shape that all of these people get in for superhero movies now, and what he's dealing, like he's literally dying as he's doing it. It's just unbelievable, and kind of just the power that he was still able to speak with in those roles. And it just means so much. And I think it really does, where we talk about people, smaller or younger Black people, just being able to see someone who looks like them on screen in such an important role. It's just all that stuff really, really matters, and that kind of representation is really important. And I know sometimes it seems like people are getting on their soapbox to talk about that, but it really means so much, and it's so important. So, yeah, it's a real bummer. He was a good one. He was a really good one. I'm looking forward to. He has one movie that's it's completed, so it's Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, which is it's based on a play by August Wilson. So he's going to be in that with Viola Davis, and I'm sure that's going to be just a great showcase for his talents. So we'll see when that comes out. But yeah, it's a real bummer. I was really hit hard by this, and it really came out of nowhere. Your phone starts blowing up with this news, and it's a real gut punch.
Yeah, it was something that I really didn't think it was true. Because he's pretty fit. He's still pretty young. 43 is a very young age for an adult, or just for someone living in the 21st century. And yeah, it was all of a sudden Chadwick Boseman has passed away from colon cancer, and just a big shock to just kind of hit you, and to see social media just instantly kind of turn into a tribute towards him, which I think says a lot for what his life meant to people.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite Chadwick Boseman role / movie?
I mean, I think Black Panther, just because of how big that is socially. But I've enjoyed him in everything I've seen him in. I really enjoyed him in 42. I think in *Five Bloods, it's really easy for him not for anybody in that movie not to stand out because there's just so much talent that's just on there. And I think, you can easily lose Chadwick in how large the performances of Delroy Lindo, especially, and Jonathan Majors and some of the other lead cast were. But I think he really does a terrific job, even if he's, kind of second string in terms of how big his character is. He really just does a terrific job with the space that he's given.
Yeah, I totally agree. I really liked Get On Up, which was the James Brown biopic that he did. Which it's really amazing that movie works because he didn't have the rights to any of the music. So it's really all on Chadwick in that movie to just have that same James Brown presence and really just carry the movie. But yeah, I think, like you said, Black Panther it's so far-reaching and really important in that sense and terrific. But I think my favorite is probably Storm and Norn from Da 5 Bloods. I think I've just thought about that movie a lot since I saw that whenever it came out, because time means nothing at this point since we're in month 6 of everything going on. But yeah, that role has stuck with me quite a bit, and I think it was the sign of what he was going to do a lot of moving forward. And it seems like every big director wanted to work with him. I know that's a Spike Lee movie, and he was going to work with plenty of others I only can imagine. So yeah, it's a real shame, just on so many different levels. I feel for his entire family and just everyone that knew him personally. I can't imagine what they're going through.
He's definitely going to be missed.
Yeah, no doubt. It's gonna sting for quite a bit. I think this does go. I said at the top of this here, but it really does go to the top of just the heartbreaking celebrity deaths for me. He just seemed like a really good dude, and it's just really sad to see anyone of that caliber go.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, he's definitely going to be missed. But we also do want to talk about some of the other stuff going on this weekend as well. So theaters theaters have been open, but there have been some new releases actually in theaters, which is kind of an odd experiment to be in the middle of right now. But the New Mutants, which I've seen it, I'm still not 100% sure it exists. But the New Mutants did release this past week, as well as the personal history of David Copperfield. But even looking at like what the word release means, normally a larger release like New Mutants, something that's a superhero film, even if it's not an A-list superhero film, is going to land in about 4,000 theaters worldwide. As it was this past weekend, New Mutants was sitting in about 2,400. And many of those are going to be international because the domestic markets aren't fully open back yet. So it's hard to gauge like whether or not these movies are succeeding. And even we'll talk about Bill and Ted in a little bit. Bill and Ted Face the Music is kind of a hybrid release, so they're able to hide most of the numbers because they don't report streaming the same way they would box office. So it's hard to gauge like what's actually making money or what would be a huge hit if everything were open. How much of this is due to theaters, having very minimized capacity. I know like the theaters near me aren't even doing a full amount of showtimes right now. Each auditorium's only got maybe 2 showtimes a day, and even on the weekends, which is just really low. And when you add on to the fact that most auditoriums are at like 30 to 40% seating, it's hard to gauge whether or not these things are actually performing well or flopping.
Yeah, I think especially with New Mutants, because I feel like throughout the many years of whatever it's dealt with, or through post-production, whatever they've reshoots, whatever they've done with it, it feels like as soon as those kind of news breaks started to happen, that this was just going to be treated as a tax write-off, and no matter what, if it was released during a pandemic or not, like I can't imagine this would have done too well for 20th Century Studios, which just sounds really weird to say, and Disney. But so yeah, it made 7 million this weekend, but like who knows what that really means. The reported budget on it was $100 million, so that's obviously that's not going to get it all back there. But yeah, I think for a while now this movie was meant to be sort of attacks right off, and let's figure out a way to get this out and then just forget about it and move on, because obviously this was stuck in the whole Fox Disney merger deal, and they were like, oh, what do we do with this? Oh, it's supposed to be R. Well, we don't really like that because we're Disney, and then all this back and forth and whatnot, and many years of interviews of the cast being like, yeah, I don't know what the deal of that movie is. And so you've seen it. I still don't believe it exists at all, until I'm actually watching it, and by the time I end up watching it, I won't believe that it exists either. I think this is just kind of a thing where contractually they had to put this out in theaters, so they're going to put it out there for as long as they have to. Then it'll probably end up on Disney Plus whenever that happens. Is really kind of the end for this movie.
Yeah, it's really disappointing because this was like the first movie to really get caught in the Disney Fox crossfire. Like so much so that they weren't able to do any reshoots for the movie, because by the time all that kind of bureaucratic red tape with, well, what exactly is Fox anymore, was cleared up enough, the actors were too old, so you couldn't reshoot convincingly. Because when you work with children, they tend to grow up and change sizes.
They do tend to age.
So like you have to look at the fact that they're not able to work with like a full range of footage, because once you put the movie together, you realize that there are a whole bunch of holes you need to fill, and then you do reshoots, and New Mutants was kind of robbed of that chance. So I feel for the team behind it on that front. But having seen it, like, this movie is just really bland. It's not aggressively bad like something like Dark Phoenix from last year was, where you're just scratching your head at who made these decisions. It's just really, really, really boring. There's 6 characters total. There's like 2 other people that get like 30 seconds of screen time but have no name. And then there's just 6 characters sitting in a room for about 75% of the movie. The other 25% of the movie is mutants running away from bears. And that part is actually fun, but it's just, the characters are just really bland because they all pretty much have the same backstory. So basically, how this movie works is it's got 2 acts pretty much. The first act is each character, all the other characters are like, well, this is this person. We don't quite know what their powers are yet, but they won't really tell us. And then, big revelation, you find out what their powers are. Turns out they killed someone they loved. That's why they're in the hospital. And then you move on to the next character. You don't know what their powers are. You don't really know where they came from. Turns out you figure out what their powers are, and they also killed someone that they loved, and that's why they're in the hospital. And it just rinses and repeats that until you get through all 5 of the main mutants. And then a giant bear happens, and that's pretty much the movie.
Yeah, that still doesn't sound like that is a real thing.
It's so strange because at no point in the movie was I like, oh, this is terrible. But when I walked out, I was like, there were maybe like 3 things that happened, and I don't care about anyone.
That's a shame, because this was first like announced when, I think it was right around when Deadpool was about to be a thing, and so this was kind of in that weird mode of, we're going to take the X-Men and do weird things with it. So we have like Deadpool and Logan, and those kind of turned out pretty well. And then you're going to like, all right, let's reinvent the X-Men. Let's put them in a horror movie. And then me reading that news is like, oh, great. This is cool. I like this idea. But then it was weird because Josh Boone was directing it, who did The Fault in Our Stars, where I was like, that's a little weird, but whatever. Why not? But yeah, for all the jokes that we've made about this movie and all its issues and pushbacks, and I don't even know how many pushbacks it's been, like at least like 5 at this point. I don't even know. But all of that, I just kind of feel bad for everybody involved, because it's like there was clearly some interesting intentionality here with kind of changing the idea of X-Men and just doing cool different things. And I would love to see a horror movie with superheroes on a pretty substantial budget. That sounds kind of cool. So yeah, that's a shame. It feels like it was like, it's like some weird ironic fate that this is the movie that's kind of the big welcome back to theaters in a sense, because it was Unhinged was last week and whatever, but this weekend really feels like it's the first weekend where theaters are really back and really is in quotation marks, because what does that even mean? But yeah, to see this movie that's just been in development hell for so many years, be back the first movie in a pandemic, there's some sweet kind of justice or whatever there. It's kind of funny.
Yeah, and this movie's also very awkward because pretty much all of the main child characters have a very specific accent, but only one of them works out actually well. So like Charlie Heaton has this like hick Southern accent
Oh
that he
no.
pulls off really well.
Yeah, okay.
Anya Taylor-Joy has this Russian accent when she can remember it, um, and it's just really cringy. It's just like think of the most Russian cartoon character you can imagine, and that's what she sounds like. And then Maisie Williams is speaking in her own accent because she is European of some sort. But like she's using the same voice she uses in Game of Thrones. And the problem is that like her actual native accent isn't there most of the time. So like sometimes she'll be trying to do like some kind of American accent, even though her character is actually Scottish. And it's very cringy because it just kind of comes and goes depending on the mood the movie's in. Um, and yeah, it's not a good movie. And I kind of feel bad because you see with like X-Men Apocalypse and Logan and I forgot the name of this movie, The New Mutants. They're all like trying to tease the future of the X-Men universe and the Essex Corporation and Mr. Sinister, who's like a big X-Men villain in the comics. And they're all basically giving the same teaser that we all know will never pay off because those movies all came out right when Disney announced that they were going to cancel everything and reboot it. And so I'm just kind of sad because you can see they were like, well, we've got some plans down the road and maybe all this will pay off. And now it's just kind of over with a dud.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like we were all like eulogizing the end of the Fox X-Men after Dark Phoenix because we were like, well, the New Mutants might never happen, so let's just do it now. But it is, man, the twists and turns that this franchise has undergone is just unbelievable to me. Where you have movies like this and Apocalypse and X-Men Origins Wolverine, then you have like Logan, which for my money I think is the best superhero movie ever, and then like Deadpool and Days of Future Past and all these good things. It's just, man, it's what a ride. I'm kind of glad it's over.
Yeah, it's kind of a letdown for me too, because X-Men 2 specifically was like one of the first superhero movies I remember owning. It was like that and Sam Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy were like my superheroes growing up. And then I mean the Batman movies a little bit later on, but yeah, like X-Men is something that's always been there. And to just like watch this thing that I grew up with just end so chaotically, I'm like, oh, that was a disappointment. Like, what was all of this worth it?
Yeah, and then now Disney's going to reboot it with whoever as whatever characters, and then we'll just repeat this cycle over and over again until the end of time.
Give me, give me Alden Ehrenreich as Wolverine, and I'm in.
Don't drag Alden Ehrenreich into this. I feel so. I still feel bad for him. I got your back, Alden Ehrenreich. I loved you in Hail Caesar.
I like him as an actor. Like, I think he'd be a fine Wolverine.
Yeah, I just want him to just go off, and I feel like Solo is just like the most crushing thing. Just go off and do some interesting things. Well, I think he's in that Peacock show, right? What is that? Brave New
Yeah,
World? Is that a thing?
yeah, I saw the show and he was fine in it, but it's just like
Okay.
a Westworld knockoff. So he again did not get what he deserves,
Bummer.
which is
Justice World.
more just fun, iconic show stealing stuff like in Hail Caesar.
God, I want to watch that movie again. That movie's so good. I'm one of those people that loves that movie.
Yeah, I remember I worked out of the theater, or I worked at the theater when that movie came out, and there were a lot of people like refunding their tickets. They're like, "This isn't a comedy," and I'm like, "What are you talking about? This is the perfect movie. Why are you leaving?"
I had the same reaction where I took a bunch of friends to see that movie and I was cackling the whole way through it. And then everyone else was like, "What the hell did you just watch?" Because that was not funny. And then me, I'm like,
Did you
this is amazing."
Did you not just see Channing Tatum do a 1950s-esque musical number to come out as a communist?
uh, I, I'm looking forward to in about 10, 15 years. I'm not the first person to say this, but Hail Caesar will have its Lebowski like revisit where every critic is like at the same time like, oh, you know what, that movie's actually really good and we were dumb, and I'll be like, yes, I liked it from the beginning because I'm not a poser.
Hail Caesar will return. Uh, but the New Mutants was actually not the only thing opening up this weekend. So the personal history of David Copperfield, which would normally be a limited release, and I feel like it still is kind of a limited release, even though everything's a limited release. Also opened up. It was weird with both these movies, seeing the Fox logo without the word Fox, because New Mutants is 20th Century Fox, and or sorry, 20th Century Studios, and David Copperfield is Searchlight Pictures, and just like seeing the big gap where the word Fox used to be is just really awkward. But the personal history of David Copperfield is something that I didn't really have a connection to going into it, but it just like filled me with joy the entire time, and I can't really ask for more from it. It was just a delightful movie.
Yeah, it's one of the two Dev Patel 2020 movies that I'm really looking forward to. Just we're waiting on A24 is just holding on to The Green Knight. Like it's made and they're just sitting on it. I'd love to see that movie, but I guess I won't till whenever. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing this movie whenever. I guess it comes to VOD because I don't think I'm going to a theater anytime soon. Uh, but I really love Armando Iannucci. The Death of Stalin was probably, it was one of my favorite movies of 2017 or whenever that came out. I really really love that movie. I think it's hilarious. But this movie, yeah, from even the trailer, it just looks like the most delightful thing when you have Dev Patel and Tilda Swinton running around and Hugh Laurie doing his Hugh Laurie stuff. It just looks really terrific.
Yeah, there's some really inventive, just like fun sets that they explore. Like there's a house that's an upside down boat that they're in. There's like a bottle factory that's a big sequence, and I mean, if anybody's read the book, I'm sure they'll probably like expect most of this. But to me, it was all new, and I was like, wow, that's a really cool thing to base your story around. And then just like all the side characters just pop really well. Like Peter Capaldi is this just kind of street urchin kind of guy who has an accordion. Hugh Laurie is just constantly flying a kite. Tilda Swinton's kicking donkeys. It's just so many fun little characters that just kind of pop in, do their thing, leave, and then come back and do it again.
So what's the deal with this movie? It's like Charles Dickens, but with David Copperfield. Is that the idea?
Yeah, so he is an orphan boy who is basically forcibly orphaned by his stepfather, and then grows up with this guy who's like Peter Capaldi's character, who's just like this poor guy in London who's constantly in and out of debtor's prison, and his family, and then he goes and lives with his other family, which is Tilda Swinton and Hugh Laurie's characters, and it's just kind of his rise and fall as he figures out who he is. And like a big motif in the movie is the name David Copperfield and what name people choose to call him by and what name he goes by, and just like him finding his identity amidst all this chaos and all these other people in his life.
So is he secretly a Skywalker?
I was waiting for it. But there was no big reveal. I think he might have been a Palpatine, actually.
Okay, that makes a lot. That makes good sense. That's good screenwriting.
um, yeah, like it was. I've never seen the Paddington movies, which is something I need to remedy.
Oh
But
my God.
I'd imagine, from what I've heard, this makes you feel the same way that the Paddington movies do.
Oh, fuck me up. I'm one of those people that adores Paddington too. Oh my gosh. It's a warm blanket from start to finish, and you just feel so good about yourself. And then there's Hugh Grant as just like a wonderful villain. Oh my God, I love that movie. Go see Paddington too. That's my contribution to the David Copperfield conversation. Go see Paddington too.
Well, whenever HBO Max gets together or gets their stuff together and gets Paddington on there, I'll check it out.
Oh my gosh, so good. So good.
And then the other release this week was Bill and Ted Face the Music, which released primarily on streaming. I know it was playing in quite a few drive-ins domestically, and even in some like smaller theater chains. I don't think the big theater chains opted for it quite yet, but it is here, and supposedly it's been pretty good. I'm blind completely to the Bill and Ted movies. I do intend to remedy that here pretty soon. But from what I've heard, everybody was just really surprised by just like how much fun and just like how stupidly good this movie was.
Yeah, like you, I don't have any connection to the Bill and Ted movies. It's a blind spot for me, and I'm looking forward to catching up with those before I wait for Face the Music to drop down from its $20 amount. Because remember, I don't pay $20 to rent a movie. But yeah, I am looking forward to seeing this because it is true. Like especially like comedy sequels and like delayed comedy sequels, which just have basically like no good track record. And like I'm thinking back to Dumb and Dumber 2, which was just really sad to watch. It just made me depressed, which is probably the exact opposite of what they were trying to do there. But I'm looking forward to seeing this at some point. And it was only a $25 million budget, which I was kind of impressed by because you look at the trailer and it looks like there's like a good amount of effects and whatnot going through it. So who knows, like there's some like delayed deferred salaries or something through there that made the budget cheaper. But that's just, I feel like that's just really good budgeting on their part, especially because who knows with how they're releasing it and just like what people are paying for movies now. I think that's just really smart on their end to just keep costs and just at a minimum, because I feel like there's another world, like you think of like something like Zoolander 2, which cost like a stupid amount of money, and all of us were like, why did you do that, Paramount? That was just that was just not a good idea. And so I think this was it seems like it was a really good bet on their part. But yeah, it seems like people are really liking it. And like you said, everyone's just like, well, this is actually like a good movie and like on par with the other ones, so that's really good to see.
So you make fun of Dumb and Dumber 2, but Peter Farrelly won an Oscar with his next movie after that. So.
Was that Green Book? What was the next movie?
Green Book.
Oh my god.
Uh,
just when I thought I was done with Green Book in my life, you pulled me back in.
but yeah, I intend to remedy my Bill and Ted blind spot here pretty soon. So I will hop on board that train at some point.
I mean, yeah, it's Keanu Reeves. What's not to like?
You're right. You're right. I'm Keanu for Wolverine. That's my MCU pitch.
You know what? Sure, why not? I'd watch it. We'd all watch it. You know you would.
But yeah, that is Bill and Ted, and then next week should be pretty big. Next week, Tenet is releasing. Christopher Nolan was slightly off. It did move from that July 17th release date. But Tenet does release in theaters. It's already released internationally, but its domestic debut will be over this coming Labor Day weekend. And then Mulan also drops on Disney Plus. I'm definitely going to be seeing Tenet because I live in a somewhat small town that doesn't have as much COVID activity. So I feel fine subjecting myself to the masses, or at least 30% of the masses in the theater. But I will not be forking over $30 to watch Mulan. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's tough with Tenet. I mean, actually did really good business overseas. It made 53 million internationally, which I don't know. When I first read that, my first reaction was, oh no, because that just means that there was many people in theaters, and I'm just scared to think about that. But I guess you got to also remember that not everything is the hellscape that is the United States in terms of its COVID cases. But yeah, I don't really know when I will get the chance to see Tenet because I live in the Washington, D.C. area, which has actually been pretty decent. But I'm actually, to give everyone a look behind the curtain into my life, I am moving soon to the Richmond area, and it's just like the cases are not good there. And so it's one of those things where I don't know, like I'm probably gonna have to wait a while to see Tenet on VOD because I feel like the Bill and Ted thing. I think that's the smartest way to release movies right now, where it's you can see it in theaters if you want, or you can stay home. But we know that Christopher Nolan will just say nay to that because he is the holy lord of bringing us back to movies, apparently. So I will probably have to wait and can't wait to get the movie spoiled for me because it seems like just everyone's going to be able to see it. I know our guy Ash on the MovieBabble staff I think he's seen the movie like 10 times at this point, and he's just freaking out about it. So he looks like he's living his best life out there. But yeah, I think I'm going to be waiting quite some time.
Yeah, I will be there Thursday at 2. I'm hoping that not a lot of people will be there because I know like AMC is releasing it on Tuesday, which I unfortunately have to actually do things for Tuesday and Wednesday. But Thursday I will be there watching it. And it's one of those things that, I'm not a huge Nolan fan. I like most of his movies. I don't think he's made anything that I would consider bad. But had we been in a regular box office summer, Tenet wouldn't have been my top movie. But now I'm just so hungry to see something good on the big screen that I'm down 100%.
Yeah, and it is interesting to kind of see what this movie does, because I think it was like a reported budget around 200 million, because he literally blew up a plane and all that stuff, and everything is in camera and on location. So it's super expensive movie, and obviously we've talked so many times about how Warner Brothers is at the point where like, hey, we kind of need to release this because we've spent so much money in the marketing and remarketing it and whatnot. So it's going to be fascinating. I think it's kind of, I don't know if it's like kind of like a microcosm or whatever of like what the state of theater going is currently, like when this movie comes out. But it's a big deal. I'm worried. I hope everyone stays safe. Don't feel like you can wait. Movies are important. We love movies around here. We babble about them all the time. But if you like, please don't go out to see this movie if you feel unsafe. Just it'll be fine. You can wait.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something. And I think there's a lot of like talk about movie theaters are dying, or if we don't rush out to see Tenet, then everything's going to go away. And I don't think that's necessarily true. I think there are enough fallback plans that the studios have and bailouts that things will be fine if you wait a couple months and just watch Tenet from the comfort of your own couch, and just pay the extra $20 or $30 to rent it for the weekend.
Yeah, I will go right against Nolan and watch it on my TV. The exact opposite of what he wanted.
I'll watch it in a baby.
I will watch it on my phone while I have the TV on. I'm also on my computer, and it's just over in the background as he wants.
Yeah. So next week I will be discussing Tenet, somewhat, with no spoilers though, to respect people that won't be watching it yet. But yeah, that is Tenet. We've talked about this for probably 30 podcasts in a row, just because the goal line for Tenet keeps getting pushed back, but we're almost done.
We're almost done. Almost.
And then there's also some Netflix activity going on. Not a ton. We haven't seen any huge, just break the internet releases like The Old Guard or Extraction in a little while. But this week's top 10 was The Frozen Ground in the number 1 spot, Project Power in the number 2 spot, Drunk Parents at number 3, 1BR at number 4, The Sleepover at number 5, Santana at number 6, Mr. Peabody and Sherman at number 7, number 8 Altogether Now, Secret Life of Pets 2 at number 9, and The Lost Husband in the 10th spot for the most popular movies on Netflix this week. Really, all I have to say is no Despicable Me. I'm upset.
Yeah, it's what the hell? It seems like Mr. Peabody and Sherman and The Secret Life of Pets 2 are on its turf. They just stole it.
There's only room for one Illumination movie in this top 10. It's not here.
It always seems like there's one. Because isn't the Lorax Illumination too? Right?
Yeah, like Illumination must have some backdoor deal with the streaming metrics on Netflix.
Yeah, it's whatever it is. That'll be weird though, because won't they be on Peacock? Because isn't that NBC, right? So maybe that'll change at some point. Yeah,
I think that's where they're moving here sometime soon.
Yeah, I don't know, but for now they are still here in our lives.
But yeah, that is Netflix. Not a lot of activity going on there, and then of course we've been watching stuff in our spare time. So I know for me, thanks to the shutdown, I got to watch a ridiculous amount of new movies this year. So movies that didn't come out in 2020, but that I had seen for the first time in 2020. And so for my 100th new movie, I wanted to do something big. So I went with Lawrence of Arabia, and was just completely blown away by how big that movie actually is. It's a little bit dicey with Alec Guinness and Brownface, but I think that's more a criticism of the time than the movie itself. But it's just phenomenal, and you see really heavily the visual influence that it has on like Steven Spielberg, who's kind of said it's his favorite movie of all time, and the influence it has on Indiana Jones. And then coincidentally, since I have just kind of gotten high on going back to the movie theater again, went and saw Raiders of the Lost Ark with some friends yesterday, and you could just see how much of an influence like Lawrence of Arabia has on the design of that movie and the way Spielberg uses shadows and silhouettes, and how he lights the desert and portrays the clothing. And it definitely puts that work in greater context for me.
I have never seen Lawrence of Arabia because I'm so like just in fear of that almost 4 hour runtime where every time, like I knew like last year it was out and it did like a re-release when theaters still existed, and I was like, oh, I should go do that, and then it was like the day to go do it, and then I was like, I don't really have 4 hours. I'm gonna watch 2 and 2/3 of 90-minute movies instead. um, but that is interesting because I think there is a few movies where like you watch The Shining and that really unlocks a lot of what Spielberg does too. Um, so yeah, it's one of those. I'm gonna get to it eventually. I've also never seen Casablanca. I'm really telling on myself here, and I'm gonna get to that too.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's not good. Believe me, I have a lot of holes that I try to hide and make myself sound smarter than I actually am. But that is really cool. It's something I've been meaning to get to for a while.
Yeah, it was definitely worth a watch. For sure, a commitment. It's like 3 hours and 45 minutes, which like at that point it's a good movie, but I'm just restless at that point. I need to get up and go do something. But very good, like a really interesting character study. And I mean, it's only the second thing I've ever seen Peter O'Toole in. So it's just really interesting to see like his range as an actor, especially how dialed in this feels compared to The Ruling Class, where he plays a guy who thinks he's Jesus, and then thinks he's Jack the Ripper, which is the only Peter O'Toole I'd seen before this, and so it was a really good watch for me.
Yeah, I always like it's. I wish because I'm a madman and try to see every new movie possible. Where when I do get a chance to go back, it is really cool to see kind of like these touchstones of cinema, capital C cinema, where like a lot of like so many other movies fall into place. Where I feel like a few weeks ago I talked about Bicycle Thieves, which I had seen for the first time, and you watch that and you're like, oh, like all like these 200 other movies make so much more sense to me. So yeah, it's one of those movies we don't see anymore. The big epic. I mean, I'm sure unless you're Scorsese on Netflix, that's really about it.
I actually have to amend my last statement. I didn't realize that Peter O'Toole was in Ratatouille, so this would be the third Peter O'Toole movie that I've seen.
There you go. Ratatouille. What great stuff.
But yeah, it was very good watch. Definitely would recommend. Definitely can see myself checking that out. Like if it ever comes to the big screen, because it's definitely something that you really want to experience the full scale of it.
Yeah, and I think that's what I have been waiting for. But then, like I said, where it got to the point, and I was like, I'm good. So I think it's a me problem at this point. But yeah, I spend my time. I kind of go. I was my girlfriend was up. I showed her a few things, and you know a movie I really love? It's This Is the End, which I contend is one of the better mainstream movies of the 2010s, and I feel like it's not really talked about as much as I feel like it should be. Um, which it's just this movie came out at the perfect time for me. I was like 16 or 17, so yeah, a lot of the Seth Rogen, uh, Baruchel, Franco, Jonah Hill humor, Danny McBride, it all just was perfect for me in the time. But maybe I watched it again. This is actually the first time I'd seen it in quite a while, and it is so good. I really, really love this movie. Just one of the better like satires of Hollywood, because obviously there's all these. It's Seth Rogen, like I said, Franco, Jonah Hill, Baruchel, McBride, Craig Robinson, and so many other celebrities playing heightened versions of themselves, and you have that amazing Michael Cera cameo in there, which is just like one of the funniest things. But yeah, it's just, oh my god, it is so good. I really love this movie, and I think it's another good example when Seth Rogen makes a movie, and he actually directed this movie too with Evan Goldberg, the guy he works with on a lot of this stuff. But he takes like a lot of really silly dick jokes and all this stuff, and he folds it into like just really interesting things. Because there's like, if you want to like look at this movie, like it's a great satire of Hollywood, where just people get raptured and it's the apocalypse, and the only people left are celebrities and actors, which is just really funny to me. And then it's obviously like there's the religious ideas of like being worthy of going up to heaven, and I think it's obviously like there's a lot of dick jokes in it, so it's not like, we're not talking about Bergman here in terms of like depth of stuff, but I love this movie so much. It's so funny every single time. I think Jonah Hill is just like the funniest. Oh my god, there's so many things I could talk about in this movie, but in case people haven't seen it, I'm gonna let people experience it for themselves, because it's one of those where it's like, it is a one of one, because it's just so bizarre and so strange, and people playing themselves. It's just, I just love it. I love it so much.
Yeah, I really like the scene where they're recreating like some of their older movies, and they're like, they're making fun of James Franco, and they're like, "We're not doing Your Highness 2."
There's the same thing with Danny McBride at the table, where he wastes all of their apocalypse food making them breakfast, and he's like, "Oh, Seth, that was better acting than like your last 6 movies. Where was that in The Green Hornet?" And they do they do the Pineapple Express 2, where I forget what the title of it is, but it's like Red's Dead or like Red's Blood or something. It's so good.
Yeah, it's one I haven't seen in a while, but I definitely like, I get the urge to revisit it every now and then.
Yeah, it's oh god, it is so funny. Just everybody is just like throwing 100 miles an hour on this movie. It is so good. And then I just keep laughing thinking about it. There's like the whole exorcism. It's just amazing stuff. And then there's just a few just knockout cameos in there, like other than the Michael Cera one. Like there's the one towards the end where I'm sure that you know which one I'm talking about. It's just unbelievable stuff. I love this movie so much. It's fun. There's a few movies that I really like watched to death in that like 14 to 17-year-old boy phase that we both had, I'm sure, where it's like you watch The Hangover like 100 times and you think it's the funniest thing ever. But I still like that movie. But there's a few where it's just like, this is just not a good movie, or this hasn't aged well at all. But I was a 14-year-old boy, so I really liked it. But yeah, this is one of those where I have a new appreciation for it.
Yeah, it's definitely one I want to check out again sometime soon.
Oh, I love it. I love it so much.
But yeah, that pretty much wraps up this week's episode of the MovieBabble podcast. We stand Hail Caesar. We stand This Is the End. Maybe next week we'll stand Tenet. But we'll be back next week talking about Tenet, probably talking about Mulan a little bit as well. And as always, you can check us out online at moviebabble.com.